Hello, everyone. We're really welcome you here today. Everybody who joined and everybody who will review this this webinar in recording. We're welcome you here on this great and interesting topic with AI security vulnerabilities. I will be your host today. My name is Maxim, and I'm a senior project manager in Glorium Technologies, and I've been a while in software development. And since over the last decade, it became really AI heavy. I've got a lot of experience and a lot of interesting products and projects with building AI. Most recently, leading the build of Cogni Agent is our AI platform, and I participated and set up a lot of teams, like software teams, and with different amount of technical details that were implementing AI into the product and AI-driven products as well. And I'm really glad to welcome today's speaker, our guest, Asna. Asna is the head of product in a great platform and #1 body AI platform in the world, I believe, FitMatch. And Asna has a great experience of not researcher of AI, but really on-hands person who was driving this product and actually other things too, with AI and within the AI world. So Asna hopefully will give us a little bit of her really hands-on experience of these questions, and she is a great person to talk about AI vulnerabilities and how to overcome them. So welcome, Asna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here because this topic is becoming extremely real for product teams. AI is no longer something that sits in a research environment. It is how we embed inside and outside of our workflows, partner platforms, mobile apps, enterprises, which means security and product design have to move together. So at FitMatch, I work on AI and 3D computer vision products that turn smartphone inputs into body insights. That has forced us to think carefully about trust, privacy, user behavior, and model outputs, and how to make AI useful without making it risky. So I'll probably answer a lot of these questions from a product lens. How do we make the experience valuable, understandable, and controlled in the real world? But thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you here, Asna. So let's dive into some interesting topics and of our conversation. We all know the questions of vulnerabilities and securities of our products, that we build, and we've been there a lot. But I can see from the market perspective that we're still thinking about security the same way, like infrastructure, code, and permissions, and some closing some passes and opening some passes. But introduction of AI and shifting over the AI market and the AI development, how does it shift the overall understanding and overall topic of vulnerabilities and safety? Actually, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift is that AI changes the product from a system to that allows fixed rules into a system that can interpret it, classify, generate, or predict. In traditional software, we're mostly protecting code paths, permissions, infrastructure. With AI, those still matter, but we have to protect the behavior and the model the users rely on, right? So if you think about it, the threat model expands. It includes the input data, the model, the prompt, the installation layer. So there's a lot of different layers that are now embedded into this process. Taking into consideration user interface, human decision, right, that happens with all these outputs. That is much wider surface area than a normal SaaS workflow. So from a product leadership perspective, I think the most important question is not just, can someone break into the system? It is also, could someone manipulate the system in producing wrong results, exposing the wrong information? And that's just something we need to be mindful as we, start to incorporate AI into our workflows.
I was muted. Yeah, I totally agree. And I really love this model of layer security, like a layer approach for the AI and actually building of the software. And like what I can see is that a lot of teams are still like focused on the level or like output consumption of the AI, but not like the whole layers. Okay, but with this shift of AI, like with this introduction of AI, are there any vulnerabilities arise that was not there when it was the clear software development?
Yeah, so now we're talking about some of the threats, right? So there are a few categories that feel meaningfully new. The first is manipulation of the model through the inputs, right? In text systems, that can be like prompts that are being injected now. And in vision systems, it can be manipulated through images, bad capture conditions, occlusions, things that really interpret how the model is kind of being read. The second is sensitive data leakage through that context, right? So AI systems often pull information from prompts, uploaded files, retrieval systems, memory logs. That means that the system can accidentally expose information, not because the database permission failed, but because the model was given context it should not have had in the first place, right? So those are kind of things that we need to consider when it comes to some of these models in the trainings as well. And then the last one is the unsafe or inaccurate output being treated as authority. So if you can think about this, traditional software usually fails in a visible way, right? An error, a message, a broken API. AI can actually fail gracefully and confidently, right? Which is accurately dangerous because users may not know the difference between a correct answer and a plausible one. So, for example, in product, the practical implications is that we have to design the workflow around uncertainty. For example, with our solution QuadraScan and within the body insights we produce, we care about the quality of the scan, right? The minimum data needed and the right level of interpretation. We do not want a user to treat every output as a diagnosis or a final decision if that is not what the product is intended to do. So AI creates risks where the system can be technically functioning, but the product itself could be wrong.
Yeah, it is like I totally agree with you. And like this topic about the confidence of the wrong answer, like model is confident, but the answer is wrong can actually can cause some harm and can provide some wrong information to users, to end users, or and to some part of our system like that we're building. And like we faced this issue when we were building Cogni Agent around the sales process. And like for example, you can have AI asking for reordering the goods like from the last order, but user ask about weather. And the answer of the model will be 100% sure, like because the weather will be this. But the weather is not something we need here, like in this workflow, in this particular goals that we're achieving. So it's like actually something that goes wrong and we don't understand that it is. Like we don't have metrics about it. And we need to build a system around it. And like if talking about like this harms that can be caused like by wrong answers or some breaks of the system, where does accountability sits? Like what is the accountable unit of this mistakes or harms that were caused?
Yeah, so we need to really define if the system behavior is problematic or deterministic. When a system is deterministic, you can usually define the expected behavior very tightly. Given input A, the system should produce output B. With problematic AI, the product leader has to accept that the system may produce a range of outputs, and the job becomes designed around that uncertainty. I think of it in three parts, really. First, what level of accuracy or confidence is required for this specific use case, right? Second, what happens when the model goes wrong? And third, does the user understand the level of certainty behind the output? So those questions are more important than simply asking whether the model is good overall. So the risk tolerance should change based on that impact, right? If AI is recommending a playlist, the cost of being wrong is low. But if AI is influencing athlete development, healthcare operations, financial decisions, and the list goes on, the product needs to be stronger, has to have validation, has to have fallback paths, and has to have human review. In our world, that means we focus heavily on standardizing the capture experience and being clear about the output represents. So if a user enters, say, for example, the wrong height or captures poor quality photos, that can affect derived measurements, right? So the UX guidance and quality checks are part of the risk control, not just the nice to have design.
Yeah, for sure. And like I really appreciate this, like it's a major point of view, like that's like companies and we are inside the organization, we're responsible and accountable for these terms, for sure. Okay, let's like we were talking about general things and general concepts, and let's maybe switch into something like really specific. Um, if we're talking about vulnerabilities in SaaS products, like what are the common vulnerabilities that you see today, like in the development teams and products?
Yeah, so there's a lot of vulnerabilities when it comes to actually designing or working with the actual output of the actual development cycle. The most common issue I see is teams adding AI on top of a product without revisiting the full security and product architecture. So they treat AI like a feature layer when in reality it can become a new access path into company data, customer data, and internal actions. So I would group the common vulnerabilities into a few buckets, right? Prompt injection or instruction manipulation, data leakage through prompts, and retrieval systems, weak permissions, poor logging. So all of these kind of stack up in terms of real world edge cases. The less obvious vulnerability is user trust, right? If the interface makes the AI feel more certain than it is, users may over rely on it. And that's where the human injection might have to come into play. That may not sound like a security vulnerability, but it is a traditional one in sense. But in real products, over trust can create operational, reputational, and even safety risk. So in AI product work, I always come back to the end-to-end workflow, right? What data is collected, where does it go, and what is derived from it? Who sees it? What decisions does it influence, right? That is the only way to understand the actual risk. So the biggest vulnerability is often not the model, it is the workflow wrapped around the model.
Yeah, thank you. That is like, and actually I can see from the teams that I was talking about, like AI, and I was talking to, I see the issue of underestimating the prompt-based data leakage risk. Like they said, like how can anybody get this data? What do you think about it? Like how often is it underestimated?
Yeah, that's a good question. So very often, I think the teams underestimate it because prompts feel informal, right? They look like text, non-infrastructure, but once a prompt includes customer data, internal policies, and just system instructions, it becomes part of the security boundary. The risk is not just a user types something maliciously, right? The risk is that the sensitive information gets placed into the model context unnecessarily, stored in logs, passed to a third party, right? And that can happen even with good intentions if the product architect is not disciplined. So a mature team should ask, what information does the model truly need to complete the task? Is the user allowed to access that information? And are we logging the prompts accordingly? Those questions should be answered before launch, not after an incident. So for a product like ours, data minimization is core design principle, right? We try to separate what is needed to generate the insight from what is personally identifying. And we are very careful about how partner workflows handle PII versus derived data. So prompts are not just casual text, and AI products are part of the system boundary.
Yeah, because it like sometimes looks like that it's not like how who can use my data, of course, but this minimization principle is something that I really like, and we're trying to get within our teams as well. If we're talking like we can I can say differentiate the teams that are building product already like for a couple of years with AI, and maybe those who are just jumping into the market with AI driven solution or just switching their product from the previous model to the model that is enriched with AI, like enriching data or using some additional data with AI. And if we can help them, like if you can show them some issues and vulnerabilities, what do you think? Like, what are the vulnerabilities the new founders or like the teams that are switching can overlook when they introduce AI to their products or
Yeah,
come up
sure.
with AI product?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in my mind, I think the most overlooked vulnerability is the permission mismatch, right? So, a founder may add an AI assistant that can summarize accounts, answer questions, take actions, but they do not always rebuild the permission model around what the AI can see and do on its behalf. In traditional SaaS product, permissions are usually attached to screens, records, and APIs, right? With AI, the user may ask a broad question, and the system may retrieve or synthesize information across many places. If permissions are not enforced at retrieval time and action time, the AI can accidentally become a shortcut around the product's access controls. So the second overlooked issue is operational ownership, right? Founders often ask, can we add AI? But not who reviews failures, who maintains evaluations, what is our escalation process, right? What does the user do when the AI's answer is uncertain, right? That operational layer is what separates a demo from a real product. That is similar to how we think about our partner integrations, whether a partner uses an SDK or app connected via API, or even our Body Insights portal. The access model and the data flow need to match the partner's use case. The AI capability is powerful, but the deployment path needs to control around it. The AI assistant should never know more than the user is allowed to know, basically.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like I recently meet a lot of people who just thinking, I will introduce AI. It means that I will just call open AI API and like provide all the data, and I will have like this AI enrichment flows. But like I like your approach about this planning and understanding the flow of AI and like what data it uses, what data it needs to use, and actually building an orchestration system like around it, like around the questions and around the answers, around what you provide to AI and around what AI provides as an answer to you. Um, I wanted to ask like interesting question from my perspective. Personally to you, because like you are working with in a product that not only like using text-based AI, and like we always reference to as AI as a text-based today, but like are there any differences between like vision-based AI usage and like in these vulnerabilities and inputs and outputs that you're facing?
Yeah, for sure. So in text systems, adversarial inputs are usually language based, right? A user may try to override instructions, extract hidden prompts, or manipulate the model through wording. In vision systems, that surface is more physical and environmental, right? So for example, lighting, camera angle, blur, cropping, pose, clothing, right? All of these or edited images can all influence what the model sees, right? The user may not be acting maliciously. They may simply capture a poor quality image. But from a product perspective, both malicious manipulation and accidental poor input can create bad outputs. That means vision-based AI needs a different type of guardrail. You need capture guardrail, quality checks, image validations, and sometimes a refusal or recapture flow. The product has to help the user create an input the model can actually trust. And that's where we are seeing the biggest impact, right? So from a practical perspective, we depend on a standardization capture, right? The right pose, the full body and frame, appropriate clothing. If the input quality is off, the output quality can be off. So the scan instructions quality gates are just UX in nature, but they actually cause a product risk if not done correctly. So in Vision AI, the attack surface is not only digital, it is in the real world scene in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it is like um this guardrails, I believe, is one of the main and central topics of the like AI security and overcoming the AI vulnerabilities. And like a lot of topics are built around the guardrails. Maybe you can elaborate on how the real guardrails can look like in production of the software product.
Yeah, absolutely. So guardrails are really important to this entire topic, I would say. In a real product, guardrails are not one filter added at the end. They are a system of decisions across the entire experience, right? So they start with the use case. What is the AI allowed to do, right? What is it not allowed to do? And what should happen when confidence is low? Then they show up in the product design. That can be included within clear onboarding, constrained inputs, permissions, quality checks, explanations, review steps, and the list goes on. On the engineering side, though, guardrails include data minimization, model evaluation, logging, alerting, any type of controls that can really support the process. The best guardrails, though, are usually invisible when everything is working and very clear when something is not. They guide the user to the right behavior without making the product feel really heavy. In our scan experience, a guardrail can be as simple as forcing a standardized capture flow or guiding the user to retake the photos when the input is not useful, right? In partner workflows, it can be about limiting what data is collected, using de-identified IDs, or making sure outputs are framed in the correct use case. So a guardrail is not necessarily a blocker. A good guardrail is what lets you scale safely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you for that answer. And like for like our team, we recently had a conversation like in one big product team, which is like working an AI-driven solution, and we separate these guardrails for three groups, like some that prevent actions, some that detect something goes wrong, like from the prevent action, and some this like that like builds a response of if something happens, like when like we caught some information that shouldn't be there, like in answer or in request and so on. So yeah, and like we can build this around these three buckets and the buckets you were talking about. And yes, so but I see that the concept of guardrail are really easy to understand, but it's not easy to understand how to build them, because from like when we are talking about deterministic software, like we understand how to prevent some values to get into the request or response. So what do you think, like where do most team and developers go wrong when trying to implement guardrails? Is it like, I don't know, policy, product, or like engineering part?
Yeah, no, this is a really good question. And I think this is determines how successful this is going to be in your actual organization as well. I would say teams go wrong when the policy, product, and engineering are not connected, right? It is something that everyone does need to work together with, and they have to have the same mission. Policy may define what should happen, right? Engineering may build a technical control around that, but product is where the user actually experiences the boundary. So if those three are not aligned, the guardrail either does not work or works or can find a way where users can find a path around it, right? A common mistake is making guardrails too abstract. A policy might say, do not provide sensitive information, for example, but the product has not defined what sensitive means in that workflow, right? The engineering team has not enforced permissions at retrieval time, and the UI does not explain what the user should do next, right? The strongest approach is to translate policy into product requirements and then into technical controls. That means every guardrail should have a user-facing behavior, a system rule, an owner, and a way to measure whether it is working. This is where my product instincts really come in, right? If the guardrail makes sense on a slide, but not inside the user journey, it will fail. The user needs to understand what is happening and still be able to complete the workflow in a safe way. So policy defines the boundary, engineering enforces it, and the product makes it usable.
Yeah, it is. And it can be probably kind of like not a holy war, but questions that we can discuss and argue on. But like backend guys think that guardrails should be on engineering part, like they should be in code. It should be like all like heavily on backend. And but from your answers and from your experience, I can see that UX can actually play this part and actually can play the magnificent set like part of this issue. How do you think where this guardrails should live? I don't know. Like, what is the main focus of building these guardrails? Like, is it UX part, is it backend part, or something in the middle?
Yeah. So a lot more of it is UX than other people realize, right? The technical control matters, but UX determines whether users understand the boundaries, trust the system appropriately, and know what to do when the AI cannot complete something, right? For example, a technical system may detect low confidence. Simple. But the UX has to decide whether to show that result, hide it, ask for another input, route to a human for review, or explain some sort of limitation. Those are product and UX decisions with real risk implications, right? So a good guardrail UX should replace ambiguity. It should not shame the user or make the product feel broken, right? It should clearly say what is needed, why it matters, and how the user can move forward. That is especially important in AI because users often do not know whether a failure came from their input, the model, or the actual system. In computer vision, this is very obvious, right? The model may need a better image, but the user needs simple instructions. Move back, improve lighting, retake the scan again, keep the body in frame, right? That UX directly impacts model quality and trust. UX is where I would say AI safety becomes understandable to the actual user itself.
Because I believe that understanding of the user is important. Like, it's not just like we cannot get your input, we cannot
Right.
proceed with your request, but like you should do something particular to actually get the right results and get the results you want with application and platforms that you're using currently. Maybe you can share any examples of the real prevention of the serious incidents, like with the guardrails approach.
Yeah. So I can give you a product pattern example from AI and computer vision without getting into the confidential partner details. In vision-based product, one of the most important guardrails is input quality control, right? If a user submits images that are poorly framed, taken from the wrong angle, or paired with incorrect height information, the system may still be able to generate an output, but that output may not be reliable enough for intended use. Um, and we see this day in and day out, right, as people are validating and testing the technology. A strong guardrail is to stop the workflow before the bad output becomes a trusted output, right? That can mean requiring a retake, flagging the scan as low quality, right? Preventing certain metrics from being shown. It really depends on the use case. That kind of guardrail can prevent serious downstream issues because the risk is not just a bad scan, right? The risk is a coach, clinician, partner, or any user making decisions based on a bad number that looked authoritative, what was produced incorrectly, or in other words, it's just a poor output, right? The guardrail protects the user and the business by saying we would rather slow the workflow down for a moment than scale an unreliable result, right? So as for example, as FitMatch is partnering with some of the leading organizations in the world, including, Major League Soccer, or even some of the larger healthcare systems that we are partnering with, right? These type of guardrails are sufficient and required in order for us to have a successful output product.
Yeah, I believe that's amazing. And like we are talking about this topic of vulnerabilities and risks, like with using AI. How do you think? Do we still need using AI and implementing AI in our products with all these risks on the table? Like, is it worth using AI if it's so risky and so hard to work with?
I think your audio had cut in and out.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, probably some. Can you
Oh,
hear
I
me
can.
now? Oh, yeah, great, great. Sorry for this technical issue. I don't know what happens, but like we are talking about vulnerabilities and risks,
Okay.
like using AI and actually building AI products. How do you think are we still need implementing AI, knowing these risks and understanding how complicated it is to build the system around AI? Just your personal opinion.
Yeah,
Will you
so
still recommend to go with the?
yeah, so no, this is a great question. Just like anything in life, right? There's pros, cons, but there's also a way to like move forward with certain things with the right measures in place. And that could be applied across our professional careers, our personal careers, our personal lives, right? So it's really about how you take it on in terms of the development, implementation of the actual processes in place, right? You have a choice of following the correct policies and the correct path. And then we have choices of just, not paying much attention to those, right? So I think that AI in the world of software development and some of these products that we're creating for some of our partners is 100% really changing the game, right? It's making us a differentiator. And that's why, FitMatch was created, right? A lot of the work we do is around the AI development of how can we enhance our partners' lives, democratize access to this technology that people just don't have access to today, right? So I 100% think that, AI is something that everyone should learn and see how they can incorporate these efficiencies to their businesses and processes. But just like everything else, there's ways to incorporate things and there's measures to take, and we should 100% take those seriously.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just wanted to follow it up with why we think that AI should be implemented, because we're talking about vulnerabilities, risks, and actual harms that it can cause to the product and to the company. And actually, like I really like your thoughts and your points regarding the building the system around inputs and outputs, and I believe that the same thing should be treated on technical side, not only on product side, not only on like the user interaction side, but on technical side as well. And we need to build the system around and understand that we are inputting something into AI system, and not only systems that we're using. As you know, like we're using AI now widely for development itself, and when we're using some third-party services and things, we also have to treat them as external source and treat like and put the same rules of not sharing data and not sharing information when we share our code, when we share our user inputs with third parties, just that helps us to produce the result. Like it's something that user don't see, but it should be also treated the same way, I believe. Yeah, and I really thank you for this answer. Thank you for this answers, and like you have amazing experience, and it's really interesting to talk about like all AI and visual visual processing in particular for me. And I believe that we can check the chat for the questions that we have during our session. Let's. Okay. So if you have any questions to us now or something that I can answer, please write your questions in the chat in the because we're on the different platforms, so probably the tools that you can submit your questions through can be different. Yeah, let me put in. Mhm. Okay, I can see. Yeah, I can see already the structured list that we can actually refer to. Um, Let me go through some of the interesting question. We were talking about the early early adopters and like when the team switching into AI. But if we're talking about particularly the switch from prototype to production, like this really important stage when you think that everything is working and you think that like, but working with test data and prototype level of product, and you want to go into production, you want to go into life, you want to use real users' data. What the risks are underestimated during this switch, and what attention points can you actually point out for our teams?
Yeah. The biggest mistake is assuming that because the demo worked, the product is ready, right? A prototype usually proves that the AI can create value in a controlled environment. Production requires providing that the AI can create valuable reliability, safety, and repeatability across real-world situations. So teams often rush from this impressive to let's ship it without answering some critical questions. And these are things that I think that you can embed into your own workflows to ensure that, the product is ready, right? What are the failure modes, right? What data is being used? What should the AI not do? How do we monitor quality, right? How do users report issues, right? Who owns the risk? The more from a prototype to production is just a technical milestone, right? It is a product maturity that is the actual milestone. So having all of this, level of detail documented and communicated across the org and continuously monitoring it, even after launch, I think is really key to ensure that everyone is on the same track within the team when you're actually deploying a product into production with AI.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I really think the same way. Okay, and if I have the question that is similar, but it's like from a little bit different perspective. Like there are some teams that were building AI and like have some releases in production, and all of us experience some vulnerabilities, like and have some issues already going into the already going product. So are there any simple steps that we can implement today or tomorrow, just between this release and the next one, that can grow the security and like safety of the product?
Yeah, this is really good. So it's basically identifying what those key initiatives are across the product, right? So for example, what is the type of data that is being inputted into the solution, right? Simple. That's number one that you can check. There are a lot of products out there that ask for a ton of information going into the experience, right? Just understanding what is the most relevant, right? And what is the most best to have. So I think you can actually start from there, right? And then the data that is being fed into the system, right? So for example, from a fit match perspective, right, we talked about the visualization and the data inputs, right? But once that data is inputted, right, having a guardrail in place to say, should we evaluate the input that was provided, and should there be any error messages, should there be any re-guidance, should there be any validation screens that kind of allows the user to pause for 10 seconds and understand the data before they actually proceed with inputting into the model. In the example of the FitMatch app, right? So if 4 photos are uploaded, or if a self-scan was uploaded and we notice distortion with the actual scan itself, we actually pause and we show that information back to the consumer to say, hey, is this correct? And if it is, then you can formally proceed, right? So those type of just checks and balances throughout the entire process are really important to ensure that, you have this data baked in correctly.
Yep, thank you. This, I hope that we answer this question. I can see a couple of questions regarding the topic that we haven't touched a lot, and it's interesting and really valuable through the theme of vulnerabilities and actually security is quality assurance. How can you build this quality assurance and maybe what principles can you use to build the quality assurance around like not deterministic systems?
Yeah, so this is a good one as well. So QA is very important, right? So traditional QA is built for predictable systems. You define test cases, you have expected outputs, and you have pass fail logic, right? So that is mainstream, I would say. AI does not always work that way, right? The outputs can vary. The model may be technically working, but still produce something that is low quality or misleading. So with AI, QA has to evolve from only testing functionality to also testing behavior. You need to evaluate things like accuracy, tone, right? Certain edge cases that need to be accounted for, privacy handling, refusal behavior. And one of the most important ones, right, is user trust. So for AI products, QA is not a one-time release checkpoint. It has to become an ongoing feedback and a monitoring loop. You're not just testing code, right? You are testing a system that can behave differently across contexts.
Yes, for sure. And also what I noticed, like you still need your common software development QA in place. You still need to take care about system. You still need like to capture failures and things, but we all know this. Like you have a lot of information around this, but you need to build additional attention and like you need to plan this AI related quality assurance inside your system. And what is also interesting that like uh, uh, you were talking about assessing the tone and the correctness of the answers, and also we need to implement and we need to take it not the deterministic way but probabilistic way. Like when you evaluate answer one time, it's not enough because out of 10 times
Right.
LLM model can actually answer differently to you. So you need to make some reasonable amount of evaluation and like you need to get this amount of evaluation empirically. Like sometimes you need 10 evaluations per nightly build, I don't know, and to confirm that everything is good and to understand like what is good for you. Is it 10 out of 10 answers, right? Or
Yeah.
is it like 9 out of 10 answers? And it's referencing also to the things that you were talking about when some of the mistakes cost more than others. Like we all know this question about and this like famous topic of the AI recognition systems, like it was from not even LLMs but ML systems, when
Yeah.
the cost of treating some person who is not a terrorist as a terrorist
Yeah.
is less expensive than actually allowing terrorists to come to the plane. And it's like famous issues that we have. So on some systems we need to treat like 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100. On some systems like we can have some threshold of
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's important in terms of when we talk about the use cases, right? So earlier we mentioned, right, the low quality or the low impact of running a playlist, right, is different than some of the governmental AI use cases that we might need, right? So it does need to be handled on a case by case basis. And I would say that there are certain measures in place that are needed as baseline for some of the entry into AI. But then when you start to get a little bit more sophisticated on the output, a lot more guardrails need to be in place. And that's for, the benefit of both the consumer, but also the provider.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We're approaching our time cap. So I think we were managed to answer the most frequent questions. Let me check the questions once again. Okay, and I believe that we can actually gather questions from the users if they will exist, and we can share answers maybe via the LinkedIn and other platforms that we are having the streaming on. So I really glad that you could join us today, Asna, and for your really amazing experience and great answers to the questions. And I really appreciate that you were, on hands, because like we hear a lot of theoretical things about AI, but on hands experience is really important. Um, Really important for actually teams that are working on, or for somebody who's planning, just planning or thinking about switching to AI into their products.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for having us. This is a really important topic. I know that there's individuals on the fence that are like, do I even enter the world of AI, right? Is it too scary? Is it just not necessary? And I would say that it is 2026, right? A lot of people have momentum around this concept, but there are some applications that are extremely useful to your everyday needs. It's just about taking the time to ingest them and understanding what needs to happen in order for you to be really successful with them. But it definitely can be something that could advance you, it could advance your industry. It's really about how you kind of incorporate it into your use cases.
For sure, it's like doing accounting without the computer in back to 90s, but
Exactly.
now it's like driving business, and we're actually like putting some trainings and do a lot of stuff without AI involved. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, thank you, Asna. Thank you for the guys who were helping us with the organization, and I wish you a great day, and I wish us all a great launches of AI products and less vulnerabilities and controlled environments that we're living in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.